All right, so here's where we get into the real meat and potatoes of the process. And this deals with first transactions. All transactions are uploaded at a category level, and that category is set up just like share classes. It's just something where you add in a category. We could add in one right now. Let's just say this is feed. And we could do this in dollars if we don't select this, or we could do this in anything we'd like let's say this is a ton. Once the category is created, then we can upload transactions against it. So transactions can be imported in a very similar way. You can go through this imports process, or you can just select imports on the transactions page. But that allows you to, again, upload a CSV in order to utilize these transactions in following processes. Right? So if you would set up some of the user-defined fields in the organization settings, you would also see them here if they were filled out. So this is just a little bit extra information if you wanted to upload things like notes, branch number, things like that alongside of the transaction. But here you can see that I've kind of got this idea of 3 transactions per account, and that's also per year. So I have transactions going all the way back to 2016. And then I've got this idea that we will allocate out each year. Now, if we take a step back to our organizational summary, you can see, like I said, that I did allocate out each year and there are credits remaining. So what that looks like is a kind of choose your own adventure. Every co-op does allocations differently, every single one of them. I don't think you'll ever find one that does it the same way. But because of that, we try to make this as flexible as possible. So in this case, you can see that I've done fuel and grain, but I did have another category out there called fertilizer. So let's look at this idea of creating an allocation for 2016 for fertilizer. I would say that if this was the 2016 fertilizer allocation, you would likely be doing this in 2017 because then all of the 2016 transactions have been performed, but you would typically do it just right after that. You would allocate almost always right away. But again, this is really a choose your own adventure. So you can name this however you'd like. I'm going to call this fertilizer, and I'm going to say that this does produce patronage. You get to choose, again, the type of allocation that this is. If this is a per unit retains that needs to be retains reported on taxes, then you may choose that option, right? There are other options like Section 199A. There are work opportunity credits and just patronage. I'm going to just select patronage today, but this will help to define and then do that tax reporting that I've mentioned in the system, what these credits really will be. The rest of this is basically just a query. It's trying to say, which transactions do you want me to perform this calculation against? So in this case, I'm going to say that this was a common share class. That's how I uploaded all of my transactions. This was for period 2016. So it's only going to look at 2016 transactions. Again, when I uploaded, I said these were sale and they were qualified. Now, if there was for any reason some sort of estate payout, or you just needed to fully allocate out one member, or maybe that one member follows some different rules, you can do that. You can select a member at this time. Right now I'm going to leave that blank, which means it's going to run for all members. But then we have this idea of calculation type. We do currently have 2 allocation types in the system that are shown here. That is the idea of a rate and then a weighted average. I would say that the majority of the time you will see a rate used in this instance, but this rate is really so that you can define, let's say you want to give back 2 cents a bushel, or for every dollar they spend, they get a penny back. That kind of ownership scheme is what's going to create that credit that you owe them, but that's typically defined when you start working with the co-op. So at this point, we'll choose a rate. So I'm going to go ahead and just do that 1 cent. I do need to pick my category. You can pick multiple categories though, and depending on how you set this calculation type will determine how that runs. Okay. So in this case, if we go ahead and select fertilizer, that was our category of choice, then we can go ahead and save. At this point, what we've done is we've made our own calculator. We've done this so that it will go out there and find the appropriate transactions, and it's going to perform the calculation that we want against them. So one really nice thing about this calculator, though, is that it gives you the option of running what's considered a model allocation or a final allocation. If you run a model allocation right now, what it's going to do is produce the CSV for you of what the results would look like. And that's awesome because sometimes you just need to be able to see some preliminary results and not necessarily have the finals right away. Sometimes not all the transactions are uploaded. Sometimes you just want to make sure that the total you're getting fits within budget for the year. Maybe they needed to adjust it to be an even lower percent or a lower rate. But we can produce that model allocation, or we can jump into final. In this instance, I am going to go straight for final, which means that a credit will actually be produced. But I'll go ahead and generate that. Confirm. It is final. And it's final in the sense that credits are being created. You can undo this process as long as you have not already revolved out. That's like right now, any of the transactions that were used in here will become locked down because they've been used. They can't be used again. And we want to make sure that they are in the system for posterity's sake, for auditability, and then also just to make sure that they are interconnected, right? So now we've run this. We'll see that there are credits created under equity here, but before I even do that, I just want to show you that you can still download these results. You can view what the allocation looked like. And then if we jump over to our home screen, we can also see now that we have more patronage that was added to the screen. If we had done this under a different category, we would see a different result here. Previously, though, we had 78,000. So we can go and check out the credits that were made from that. So in 2016, if we just look for ones that contained fertilizer, you can see that these were all of those credits. And right now you can also see that this is how much you've allocated. We haven't paid anything of that out yet. We haven't done any sort of revolvement. And so we still owe all of it. This is where we get to our next step of revolvements though. But before we do that, there's just a couple of screens I want to walk through. There is the idea of all member equity, and this gives you a very full view of all of the equity for all of the members. It will show it to you for across all periods. In all of the other screens, things like credits load per year, but this page is across all years and it's totaled up. So in this case, this is all of the 2016 retains and patronage and the total. Okay. There's also this idea of equity transfers. It works very similarly to the share transfers. So again, if we just pop back into here and we go to equity and stocks, we can click transfer, and this will allow us to move things from one member to another. Now you could transfer everything that this member has. You could transfer based on the allocation. So in this case, there's quite a few allocations that they've performed, and you could just transfer all of these results, right? Otherwise, we can also do just a percentage of an allocation. Maybe you wanted to do 10% of the 2016 grain patronage, right? You can define that however you'd like. Or there's this idea of specific amount. You do still choose an allocation in that sense. But this means that we could transfer $200. Let's, of course, again, transfer it over to Ashley. But this will move the equity from this member to the other member. We went down by 200, and we can see in equity transfers that that has been moved over. Perfect. So now that everyone has the equity that they need, it's really time for a revolvement. This is the payout process or the start of it, and this really determines exactly what kind of check a member will get for the co-op. In this case, I haven't built any, right? I'm going to say that everything that was in the system was what was in there, and we are now going to go revolve out come 2016. Now, again, create your own adventure. This is just us providing a calculator and the tools in order for you to grab the results you want, calculate it, and then find a payment out of that, right? So we try to be as flexible as possible. And what I'm going to say here is this is the 2026, patronage payout. Okay. Types. Now these revolvement types are standard and dollar amount. And again, those are just calculations. Those are ways for you to perform these revolvement calculations. And it's going to be, of course, based on what your business desires, right? So in this case, a standard revolvement is pretty simple. You're going to select which credits you want to revolve out, basically. A dollar amount revolvement, however, is more of along the lines of we have $1 million to pay out. We want to start at a certain time frame, and we want to pay out as much as we can. Okay, so I do want to walk you through what kind of the options are here for both. But again, this is just a calculator. It's just a tool to find the appropriate transactions. I said transactions, excuse me, credits, the appropriate credits, and then create payments based on those. So in this case, when we do this idea of a standard revolvement, what we do is we select the revolvement period, that's right now. And you can revolve out a percentage. So we could just do 50% of the very first patronage allocations. So we could choose a category or we could choose all. If you recall, both grain and fertilizer had a 2016. So we could do 50% of both of those, which means I'm just going to choose all. And then let's pick that 2016 allocation period. Now, you don't have to select an allocation, but you can. And then I do want to choose patronage and the related distribution type. Now, if I were to utilize this idea of summarized payments, what's going to happen is instead of creating one payment, if instead of creating two payments, it will create one, right? In 2016, most members had a fertilizer and a grain credit, right? And so in this case, I only want to make one payment for each person. I would summarize payments. For now, I'm going to keep them separate. I just want to let you know that that option is there. So we'll go ahead and save. Again, this is just us creating a calculator, so let's go ahead and generate it now. The payments are actually being generated, and what that means is it's creating records out here in the payments that you can go and check on. It's also going to update the related credit records. So let's go take a look at the payments. So here you can see that we did create those payments. We'll also see back on the home screen that the amount owed was reduced. Perfect. And then if we also go to look at our credits in 2016, let's go ahead and again just look for that fertilizer. You'll see that 50% was paid. Okay. So here you can see we've got a bit of an audit trail where 50% was revolved out. Okay. Now there's one final step in the system in order to really mark this process as finished and done. But before we even do that, I do want to just look at one more revolvement. If in 2026 we talk about this idea of dollar amount, what we're really saying is we want to set a dollar amount. This allocation becomes a starting period. So let's go ahead and do 2016 again. Let's do dollar amount. I want to do as much as we can. We don't have to set an estimated payment date. That is an optional field. And I want to pay out 300,000. Again, this is common. Let's go ahead and choose our fuel. And this was qualified. Let's go ahead and summarize those. That'll be good. So now when we run this, we should see our total update to our requested total. 300,000. If we come back again to the home screen, we should see a big difference now. We paid out as much as we could. Again, 300,000 of that retains. Okay. And then in payments, we'll be able to see in some instances that these are made up of more than one thing. So here you can see that they paid out the per unit retains from 2016, 2017, and so on. Okay. Now, what you need to do is download the payments file. This process is really just going to be to mark them all as paid, and that really locks them down in the system. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Share that here with you. This is mostly used just to help you download and then import it into your ERP, at which point you'd make a vendor payment journal where necessary. But the thing that you need to do is update the payment date. So let's go ahead and say today. And then provide a reference number. So in this case, this would likely be a check number. You may say wire, could just be a payment reference, whatever you'd like to say. It is optional. But I'm just going to say check number 1. Okay, let's go ahead and copy that down as well. And then we're going to go ahead and save. Okay, now that we've got it saved, what we'll do is come back over here to, we can do it here on payments if we'd like, or from that import. So if I go ahead and just choose the payments file, what this is going to do is update the payment date. It will lock down the record, and it will also mark everything as paid according to taxes, actual payouts from reports, and then it will update the related credit records. You won't be able to pay any more out, of course, right? So here we can see the paid records do have that payment date on it, as well as a check number where applicable. Again, if we look back at our credit records for 2016, we should be able to see, actually let's try 2017 even, should be able to see that those were all paid out from that 2026 retains process. You can even see which check number, and that it's fully paid.